Welcome to another edition of Charla Sasala at Mabuhay TV. I'm your host, Carla Atanasio. And 2024 is a special year of celebrations and anniversary. So to help us look back, reminisce, and also look forward to a lot of happenings here in Winnipeg, I am joined by none other than His Worship, Mayor Scott Gillingham. Welcome to the show, Mayor.
Thank you, Carla, for having me. I'm really thrilled to be here.
This is a very exciting time here at Multicultural as well as Mabuhay TV. The mayor has been in office for about, a year and a half now?
Getting close to a year and a half.
Getting close to a year and a half. So not only will be celebrating, the 150th anniversary of Winnipeg. Oh my gosh, 150 years. I can't even imagine how long that time is. But also you're celebrating, you're almost 2 years in office. How does it feel, to be the mayor at this very interesting time where we're developing, we're growing, we're expanding?
Well, it's an honor. It really is an honor and a privilege to be the mayor of Winnipeg. And so I hold that dearly and thank the people of Winnipeg who've been so supportive during the election a year and a half ago, but even since that time, Carla, I've had so much support from so many people across Winnipeg, the various cultural communities, various neighborhoods of Winnipeg. But you talk about the fact that it is Winnipeg's 150th anniversary, which is a remarkable time to celebrate. And so during this year, 2024, we are both looking back and looking ahead. And the theme of our anniversary celebrations is our shared stories, our shared future. Across Winnipeg, within neighborhoods, within families, within cultural communities, we all have stories. We all have our stories of our experience with Winnipeg. And the fact of the matter is, unless you're Indigenous, all of us are immigrants or have come from families who have immigrated to Winnipeg at some time. And so there's a lot to celebrate this year.
Yeah, I don't know if this is general public knowledge, but you actually grew up outside of Winnipeg, you have, kind of emerged as an adult and went to school here. Can you tell me some things that you love about Winnipeg?
You're right. I grew up on a farm southwest of Winnipeg. My family's still on the farm, but I've lived in Winnipeg most of my adult life. And I love this city. One of the things I enjoy the most is our cultural diversity. It is really part of our strength. But with all the diversity comes various foods. Winnipeg has a great food scene. My wife and I actually were on a trip this last summer outside of Canada, and we were traveling. About halfway through the trip, it was a 2-week trip, my wife said, I really miss Winnipeg's food scene. And she was right, because the food here across the city is just fantastic. But it really is the fact that we are a very diverse community, and it's that diversity that makes us strong. In fact, Winnipeg's motto is one with the strength of many. And that's really what the vision of our future is. Mm-hmm.
And I really love that you touched on our diversity, because I know when you were running as mayor, one of your platforms is, there's an emphasis on collaboration and reaching out in different communities. And so you actually launched this multi-faith and cultural circle that you're calling it. Has there been new insights, that came out of those conversations? It's not a formal committee per se, but just the fact that it exists, kind of helps us know that it informs your policies as mayor.
It really does. One of the reasons that I launched that, and we've got a great group of people who are part of that circle, it's a dialogue circle mostly, and what it helps me to do as mayor is to hear from the various communities. It's impossible in the work that I do to get to every different neighborhood and every different cultural group and community, but by having this circle of individuals who are not official, they're not official representatives of various communities, but they do represent what is going on in communities. And that's important. For example, recently we had a group of Ukrainian committees that were formed to help with celebrating the city's 50th anniversary relationship of our sister city relationship with Lviv. Mm-hmm. Well, of course, the people of Ukraine right now are going through a very, very difficult time. And one of the strengths of our city is that because we have had waves of Ukrainian immigration, we have this cultural infrastructure that I keep calling it. And that has allowed and enabled us as a city to embrace and welcome Ukrainians that are transitioning to Winnipeg for the time while the war is going on. And it's the strength of as an example, the Ukrainian community here that has enabled that to happen successfully.
There's so many Ukrainians, I see them everywhere, and it just makes my heart, really happy to see that Winnipeg is really this place of melting pot. There's so many interesting cultures and so many different perspectives. And I know you're no stranger to different perspective. Before you were in politics, you were a pastor. And so my question now to you is, there's a lot of lessons that you've learned along the way. What's the main difference between, leading a congregation and leading a city? I know there's multiple perspectives out there, but how has it been?
It's been really good. And in fact, many people think that, Carla, maybe it's so different being a pastor or being in politics and being the mayor. There are a lot of similarities. There really are. And I think that 20 years as an ordained pastor has served me well. It's been good training for this role that I'm in now. First and foremost, I think politics has to be similar to what faith leaders are. It's got to be about service to people. It has to be. The moment I lose sight of that, the moment I get into trouble. It's about serving this community in this capacity. And it's about working with people. Both faith leadership, pastoring or politics. It's about working with people and trying to do all we can collectively to improve the lives of those around us. And that's ultimately what we do at City Hall. Myself and the 15 city councillors is we're trying to make decisions, difficult as they are, to improve the lives and the quality of Winnipeggers so that our tomorrows are better than our yesterdays and people have opportunity for growth and success and jobs and health. Those are the focuses, and so there's a lot of similarities between pastoring and being the mayor.
Exactly. I really like that answer. I mean, as a pastor, right, you're often the community leader, you're sometimes a counselor, and so that has really well equipped you to lead the city. So we were saying that Winnipeg is celebrating its 150th anniversary, and being mayor isn't exactly an easy job. You have to liaise, not only between the province, but also the federal government. And in the recent announcement that the federal government has about housing, for those that are unfamiliar with how the Canadian government works, can you tell us a little bit about where exactly the City Hall, the mayor's office, is, in this facilitation of more housing in the coming years?
That's a really great question. Thank you. Well, I'll maybe first of all say that Winnipeg continues to grow through immigration. I mean, we know that I think statistically about 10% at least of Winnipeg's population is Filipino, of Filipino descent. And that's important because the Filipino community has and continues to be such an important part of the health and strength of our community. There are more people coming from all over the world to Winnipeg. We need more housing. We as a city can't afford to build the housing or get enough housing built fast enough. So there has to be partnerships in Canada, and here in Winnipeg, certainly with the federal government, the provincial government, and the city of Winnipeg. And so we have taken steps as a city with the federal government. The federal government has made money available, $122 million available to the city of Winnipeg to get more housing built. And so it's really about partnerships. You alluded to that, Carla. So between the federal government, the provincial government, the city of Winnipeg, nonprofit organizations, and builders, developers in this community, all working together to get more housing built. In fact, just recently at one of my speeches, a State of the City speech, I put a challenge out to our city staff and to the entire community to get 8,000 housing units approved for development over the next several months. I would like to see 8,000 units of housing approved for development by the end of November 2024. That's an aggressive target. It's a stretch target. But because of the speed of our immigration and the number of people coming to Winnipeg, we need those units built.
Yeah, and absolutely, I think that's very much needed. I've spoken to a lot of international students, to some professional folks that often are very curious about Winnipeg because as a city, we are one of the few affordable North American cities to live in. But there's also plenty of opportunities and very talented people that are around us. So that's a very exciting time to be in. you also mentioned your State of the City address that just happened like a couple days ago.
Right.
And I wanted to ask about some priorities, and one of them includes the revitalization of downtown. So as someone who goes to school downtown, works downtown, I have a very special place, in my heart about downtown Winnipeg. But as mayor, what are some of your priorities, but also some of the challenges that you can foresee about downtown revitalization?
Downtown is a priority, and it has to be a priority for us. The health of our downtown really does matter. So whether viewers today are watching from the northwest corner of the city in the Maples area, or let's say Transcona, down in the southeast at Sage Creek, or southwest at Waverly West, no matter where from across the city you're watching today, the health of our downtown matters, because our city will only be as healthy and as strong as our downtown is. It's the core of our city. It's the heart of our city. One of the keys to having a healthier downtown is more people living in the downtown. So that's why we're prioritizing getting housing developed in the center of our city, in our downtown. But to do that, we also have to address some of the safety concerns in our community. So we are making an investment in safety. There'll be 24 new police officers that are hired in 2024 to be foot patrol, walking around in the downtown to provide safety and security. We're also increasing our investment in downtown, what's called the Downtown Community Safety Partnership. And those individuals, they provide safety in the community, but what they do really is they focus on those maybe in our city who are struggling and making sure they get to the resources they need. And then we're hiring brand new community safety officers, and those individuals, it was a campaign commitment I had, those individuals will be on our buses and around our bus stops. And there'll be a security team, but they will be able to make sure that if police need to be called, police are called. But if the people they're working with really just need a warm place to sleep, or food, or connections to addiction services, or connections to housing, they'll do that as well. And so they're not going to be police officers. There'll be a community safety team. They'll be helping out individuals and making our bus system safer.
That's wonderful to hear. And, again, it reflects back to, the teachings that you've had maybe growing up. A lot of these policies sound, out of compassion, are very humane. Do you have any other priorities that, you think the root really comes from helping others? Not only, people that live downtown, but also Winnipeg in general.
I appreciate you saying that. Yeah, I think that one of the other focuses that it's kind of tied to it is in the 16 months I've been in office now, we have made more investment in what's called 24/7 safe spaces for those who are struggling with homelessness or unsheltered, so that they have a warm place to go. I've said that we're a winter city. It's been mild this winter, but most winters it's not. There is we never want it to be that there's a cold night where someone doesn't have a place to sleep. So we've actually made more investments in 24/7 safe spaces. We've put 4 of them, we've invested in 4 of them, so that on cold winter nights or cold winter days, people have a place to go. We don't want anyone sleeping on the street. We don't want anyone sleeping, in encampments. That's our goal. I have a good relationship with the new premier and his government. Our council and the provincial government are trying to work together with the frontline agencies who are helping those who are struggling with homelessness. We're trying to work together to build one plan and make housing first a priority, so that we can get some people off the street into housing with the wraparound supports that they need. Some people struggle with mental illness. Some people struggle with addiction. So we want to make sure that people have the help they need as well. But I think it's incumbent on us, it's a responsibility of all of us as a society to care for one another. And so we want to make sure that people can come off the streets into housing with wraparound supports.
Yeah, so speaking of, helping others and determining, our place in society, you alluded to reconciliation earlier. And for some viewers who may be new to Canada or are not really familiar with the concept of reconciliation, do you have any advice for the regular Joe, regular Jane, on what actions they can do in order to build those relationships, with our Indigenous brothers and sisters?
That's a good question, thank you. And I think that, unless you're Indigenous, all of us are immigrants, or we've all come from families who at one point came to Canada. My family, my dad's family came in 1907 to Winnipeg from England. So, you know, from generations ago, my family were immigrants to this nation. Canada has, unfortunately, over its history, has had a very bad track record of mistreating Indigenous people, and that's where, you know, we're now at the place where we need to commit to, as Canadians, to the journey of reconciliation. So my first advice would be for all people to understand Canada's past. It's a difficult journey to go back and look at what really happened, but I think it's important because there can't be reconciliation unless there's truth. So we have to face the truth of what's gone on. But then the second, you know, piece of advice would be to commit to the journey of reconciliation. And it is a journey we're not always going to get right, but to have these opportunities to work with Indigenous community members, whether it's First Nations, Métis, Inuit, and making sure that we're pursuing goals together that give equal opportunity for all people. One of the things that was part of my campaign commitment is to focus on economic reconciliation. In Winnipeg, we have this really exciting project that's proposed along Kenaston Boulevard near Grant.
Is that the Cap Young Barracks?
It is.
Yeah,
The old Cap Young Barracks. It used to be an army barracks years ago. The Canadian Army pulled out of there and went to Shiloh, Manitoba, and now it's this open space. But a lot of those that space is now belongs to Treaty 1, the Treaty 1 community members, Treaty 1 Development Corporation, and they've got exciting plans for housing and commercial space there, and that's an important project that I'm committed to see develop.
That is very exciting. Lots of the changes I think that we're wanting as the public. Sometimes we expect most of the time we expect our leaders to, you know, take the initiative, but oftentimes we forget that we also have that capacity and that power to affect change. And that kind of relates to what will be our last questions for today, is about hope. So, you know, recently I have been listening to the news, reading, you know, newspapers, and sometimes I can't help but feel like the world is so bleak and there's no hope. But, you know, maybe you can part us with, you know, words of affirmation. You know, is there hope? What can we do in order to affect change in the future?
There is hope, and it's each one of us. You know, we don't have to change the world, none of us, but we can just change our little corner of the world in our relationships and the people we come across, whether we know them or we don't know them. It's just about, you know, making sure that we are making the world around us a better place. And I think it's one act of kindness at a time. It's one act of generosity at a time. It's one act of goodness at a time. The other day, I saw a post that one of our homeless shelters put out. They just needed certain products. And so we just quietly went out, got the products, dropped them off. And it's those kind of things. We just like, if everyone would do that, if you've got a neighbor, the snow falls, and you've got a neighbor who's elderly, without being asked, just go out and shovel their sidewalk or driveway and your driveway. It's those little things that really do make a difference in people's lives. And I think that it's by showing kindness and generosity and love to one another, it really it shines the light of hope around us, and I think that's important for each of us to do. It's the things we can do. We don't need any money to do that, to be kind to other people, but it makes our world a better place to be.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Mayor. This has been very enlightening. And I'm sure a lot of folks also learned about your function as a mayor, what the City Hall does, about reconciliation, and a lot of things to be excited about, you know, what's happening in Winnipeg. So thank you so much for joining me today. This has been amazing. And for the people that are watching us at home, I want to thank you all for watching Mabuhay TV. Follow us on Instagram and on Facebook. Twitter's coming up, but we'll see how that goes. I am, again, your host. My name is Carla Atanasio. Mabuhay.